Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. So this week we have my brother Kit. But before we get started, I'd like this to be an interactive experience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We'll try and pick some good ones and put them to the guest. Please be respectful of each other. And if you think you might like to come on the show yourself, please do get in contact. The details are on my channel's About page. But for now, Kit, why don't you welcome yourself and introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm his brother. That way. I'm living in Helsinki right now, and I'm working in the games industry. Don't know what you want to get into first.
So you're working games industry. Your what's your title? Your job title? It's a game art designer or something like that.
No, it's lead technical weapons artist.
Okay. And so what does that
normally
entail?
People have 2 words in their job title, but I have 4, and it seems to follow me around. And yeah, I make guns for the games.
Okay. Concepts and textures and models and all sorts.
Yeah. Weapons is one of those specific roles that when you get into the kind of that specific area, you end up having the knowledge that maybe the concept artist wouldn't have, because they're more focused on making a pretty environment scene or making a cool looking character. Mm-hmm. And they don't spend the time to find out what the function of a particular element in the weapon is. And that means that often the weapon artist, the 3D modeler, will also do some concept work. Not all of it, but it will it's quite regular for the weapon artist to be doing from beginning to end.
Okay. And so I guess we're talking about first-person shooters mainly, and so the weapon is typically right in your up close against your screen, effectively. That makes it high detail, sort of high precision on accuracy and reality, that kind of thing, or is it more conceptual and futuristic?
It depends a lot on what projects you're working on, but the stuff that I do, I guess it's to me, it's a really interesting topic of the 3 different elements of being a creative person or a making person. And this applies to everything in my mind, like making videos, making electronics, but there's like design, art, and craft. Mm-hmm. And I basically avoided art for a long time. And I avoided design for a long time, and I just focused on craft, just getting good. And so that's basically a lot of focus on knowing your tools, how they work, what you need to do to get the result that you want. It's a lot of focus on not really being super kind of out there looking for new ideas, but more like I need to make this object exactly as it should be. There should be no question that this is that thing. Mm-hmm. And that applies, I think, to kind of all creative fields. You can have like different levels in those 3 perspectives or those 3 philosophies.
Okay. So we're talking sort of blue sky, out of the box thinking versus what exists but is like refined a bit, I guess, that kind of thing.
I guess the way I would describe those 3 is like craft is about, if someone asks you to make a thing, they give you the design and they give you the kind of vision behind the design. You're able to execute without questioning.
Mm-hmm. Like you have everything you need to make a thing.
Yeah, you just make it.
Right. Yeah.
Design is like solving a problem. So someone comes to you and says, "We need this that will feel like that, do this, move like this," and you have to solve all those problems and come up with a design. Right. This applies to all. Like a chair has to be designed by someone, mm-hmm. and has to be made by someone. But then there's the art side, which is more like the individual voice. It's like, I am making it like this because I want to, and I'm not going to explain myself to anyone. And it's just that's what it is. I made a thing.
How many liberties can you take? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. You can see that in like movie directors, like Quentin Tarantino is like an example. He just makes movies, and there's lots of hidden stuff in there. There's lots of kind of crazy things happening, but he's not really like, he's never going to say, oh, I designed this to create that feeling. He's like, no, this is just what I wanted to make.
It is.
And
Yeah.
it just is.
Okay.
So I kind of, that art stuff I find really interesting, but haven't really approached
not so
it
much. So I think you're okay for me to mention that you worked on a pretty big game, Rainbow Six Siege, and you got involved with some of the new weapons and some of the new tactics, I think, or the rules. I can't quite remember what they're called. The gameplay aspects of the stuff as well.
Yeah, well, we could probably break down like the internals of a game development team, just to make it easier to discuss things.
Yeah, sure.
So game development, it covers everything. And for this discussion, I'm going to ignore marketing and kind of HR and all that stuff, which is super important to selling it.
Focus on the R&D.
Yeah. It gets complicated. Yeah. So when you're thinking about making the second to second or the minute to minute gameplay, there's lots of different fields involved in that. And on Rainbow Six, on Siege, it's a game that's 700 people or something globally working on it in some way.
Yeah, okay.
No, just in some way. So that could be QA. Anyway, I'll get into. So before I get into that, that means that you've got lots of specialized roles and lots of people doing different things. But in like the simplified, streamlined, one person does one job kind of dev team, you would want, for example, you'd need a game designer, and that's the person who makes the rules and says, when the player presses this button, this will happen. Mm-hmm. They define all the numbers about
game, I guess. Yeah.
Mechanics, yeah. Then you've got like the level designer, so that's the space you're inhabiting, the way that the level is shaped, so that you can move around it. Then you've got the environment artist, which takes that block out and makes it look pretty.
Okay. So an environment artist really gets a map, a level with like sightlines and whatever else. These are what they will be. Just make it now into a thing which people will actually be okay to play in. Okay.
But on top of that, when you're working in like linear games or story-driven games, the environment artists and the level designers have a lot more of a loop.
Okay. Good to know.
Where they go back and forth. Because
so I was trying to break down into your art and your craft. It's like sounds a bit like they have their roles in that aspect as well.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, like the level designer, as in that role that I was talking about of designer, artist, and crafts person. The level designer, it's in their name. They're designing the level so that the player has the optimal experience, and it's kind of similar to theme park layouts. Mm-hmm. It's basically that, right? Like a game in many ways is a theme park. Of course, it can be elevated to being closer to art, but that doesn't mean that it's still not designed to create an emotional response. And yeah, so there's lots of discussion there. But you've got the game designer, level designer, environment artist, and then when it gets down to kind of what the player character is, you'll need a concept artist, you'll need a character artist who is specialized in softer forms, sculpting and cloth and all these things. They make those things. And then weapon artists and vehicle artists, they make the hard surface objects like the camera. You've got your weapons, you've got your vehicles like your tanks and your normal, I don't know, motorbike or snowmobile or whatever. But then that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, you have QA, which is your quality assurance, the same as in most other like software development. You need someone to check that this thing works. But in games, there's a lot of moving parts because everything is like, we've all seen bugs of games online, and weird videos, but everything can interact with everything else, and the slightest thing looked over, like the collision mesh that you walk on, if one tiny area of that isn't made right, then the player could fall through the world and you have a problem. So and of course, if it's a linear game, you'd have a writer. Like, it goes on and on and on. And when you're thinking about like the ultra streamlined kind of what are the teams, it's basically art, design, animation, and then kind of a hugely important part of code. Like the programmers who make this actually work, who make stuff, like do the things. But yeah, so that is like, and then within art you have VFX artists. I'm trying to like make sure I don't miss anyone, but basically there's lots of moving parts. And when I was on Siege, I was working at Ubisoft Barcelona, and when I started, I was just making guns in the corner. They hired me just to make the new weapons, and basically I just made the game designer set how many bullets were fired every second. They set how many were in the magazine. They set all those values. You didn't need anything that I was making to play the game. You could just have a box there. And all I was doing was making an object that would fit in that space and that we could add skins onto and all that kind of stuff. But because I loved the game and I had been playing since it came out, and because I was maybe opinionated and annoying to the game designers, they saw that I was interested, and so I started working with the game designers and what's called the balancing cell for Rainbow Six Siege, which is a group of people from all of those different teams. So there's a couple of game designers, quite a few coders, an animator, VFX artist, a couple of audio guys. At that time, there were a couple, and just someone from everywhere, so that anything that needed to be changed, tweaked, improved, we could do. We could make the changes needed. And
I guess it's important to have all those people involved as well, so that you can have some kind of grounding in reality. You know, what is actually achievable. And everyone can pipe up and say, no, we can't do that.
We were on like shorter kind of sprints or shorter kind of things sometimes, but then other times they would be huge. So like one feature we were working on is like changing a number. And then the other feature we're working on is reworking an entire system to add, for example, the fire effect in the game, where you would be able to shoot a flaming arrow into one point, and then it would propagate. And the propagation system was something that took months. And at the beginning, they proved it, but we needed to continue iterating on solving every single last problem that came up. And it's quite an intense process, because when the game is already live, you can't introduce any more problems. You have to make sure that it's stable as possible. And problems always happen, bugs always exist. But so they asked me to join that team to work on what they called realization design, which is essentially the creative director has a vision for the game in terms of not only like how it will be played, but the feeling the player should have while playing it, and the level of technology we're talking about, the style.
By level of technology, you're talking about individuals' computers that they're playing on, or in the game technology?
In the game, the fantasy.
Right.
So maintaining the fantasy is a good way.
Yeah, keeping the illusion.
So realization design is basically kind of maintaining that creative vision, that fantasy, but also trying to say yes to as many people as possible. So game design come along and say, we need this box to do X, Y, and Z. And I need to say, give me 2 days and I'll find some technology out there on the internet that would make sense to be able to do the things you want it to do.
Okay. So I think you might have an example of this. Are you willing to share a screen?
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah. I'll get it up on ArtStation once.
Cool.
That was quite a Let's get it.
Do you want to give it a bit of talk while you're doing that, or is it?
Yeah.
Something you got to find.
No, I've got it here. So
you got it ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So do you want to talk us through what this is and how you came about to producing it, etc.?
Sure. So this is a hard breach charge. Basically, the idea behind it is that you place it on the wall and it makes a hole. In Rainbow Six Siege, the game is attackers and defenders. The idea is for the attackers to get in and plant a diffuser. So the map is made up of very destructible environments, and the gameplay can be very quiet and then like a burst of energy. And since the very beginning of the game, there had been a gadget that you could place on a wooden wall and it would destroy the wall and you can walk through. And there were gadgets which were kind of for particular characters, which were kind of special. They were primary gadgets, and they would do the same thing, but on the reinforced walls with metal sheeting. They would destroy the metal sheeting and blow a hole. So we were tasked with making a weaker version of a gadget that would make a hole in a reinforced wall. So
is this kind of a balancing process? Or is this okay?
Yeah. So
that one's too powerful. Make it a little bit.
Yeah. On the one side, you have the original breach charge, which can just make holes in wooden walls, and then on the other side, you have the kind of the character's name is Thermite, and he can make. He's roughly the same type of gadget, but he makes a big hole in a reinforced wall. And they wanted something here, but weaker.
Okay.
Something in between,
yeah.
Less powerful.
Cool.
So this was the design that we came up with in the end. And I'll show it and then talk about the process because it was quite, quite long.
For it.
So when I was saying about the kind of maintaining creative vision, one of the things is we don't want this to look like too crazy in the future. And when it's a secondary gadget in this game as well, it should look less technological. It should be a bit more simple, a bit more kind of rugged, and you could find it nowadays. It shouldn't look too special. So basically, now that we have both sides, the idea is that the final, after lots of deliberation and everything, is that it would make a square hole.
Okay.
That wasn't always obvious, as I'll show you in a second. But we needed lots of different things. The list that I'll go through now was that we needed a blinking light at the top that showed that it was active. We needed that also showed when you could place it and when you couldn't place it. Some walls in the game you can't destroy, some walls you can.
So the light on the gadget itself gives you that indication. Because I know some games have like a pop-up, press F or whatever,
Yeah. We wanted to try and make this as much of that we want to do with like small animations. So just like pulling up, pulling down, or a light. In the end, I think we went with animation for this one. So the character holds it here and then pulls it up when it's ready to place it on the wall. Gotcha. So the light was originally meant to be like yes or no, but they still wanted the light to relay information to the player, the user experience team, UX designers. They said, this is important. So this is important. The next thing was that it should be clear. The next thing was from the game designers that this thing shouldn't destroy the wall straight away. So it has to have a customizable timer on it. So it has to be able to be activated, and then kind of we need to be able to control how long it takes to make the hole.
So does that give like effectively the other team a chance to defuse it or turn it off kind of thing? Or is this just more of a, it takes time to use this gadget, you can't just immediately have a hole in the wall?
So there's two elements. There's the first one, which is, the other team needs to know that it's happening. Because if you immediately make a hole in the wall and it doesn't feel good.
Take damage on the other side of the wall and stuff, I imagine. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff, like just sudden things. Yeah. So you need to tell the other team something's happening. Then the other side of that is that you need to tell the other team something's happening, and my mind is just gone blank. But no, okay. The other side is that we need to be able to change it. So we need to be able to say, okay, let's try it with 3 seconds. Oh no, that's too fast. Let's try it with 10 seconds. Oh, that's too slow. Let's try it with 7 seconds.
Does that happen like on the live game, or is that in a beta testing phase or something with select people who know that they're going through this kind of trial?
Both. So when working in the balancing cell, one of the big things was balancing levers. So basically, we need to put as many different features into well, not as many, but we need to put enough features into the gadget or the game design that allows you to pull this lever down a bit, pull that one up a bit, tweak it. So as many variables as possible, rather than like, this is how it is.
It just is this. Yeah. Okay.
So this was a variable that we needed, was it should show the other team that it's happening, and we need to be able to change the length of time it takes. But on top of that, we also need the other team to know how far through it is, and my team. So both teams need to know how far through the gadget is in its sequence of destruction. All of this to say, we have these 6 shaped explosives, and then these 4 other shaped explosives.
Okay.
And the logic is obviously not perfect. That's one of the things that you have to get past a lot with this stuff, is that it's like, it's a nice theory, but you have to like...
A lot of the time in films, and I think in games as well, you get beeps when the bomb's about to go off, whatever, and that's not realistic. If you're going to plant a bomb in secret, you don't want it to beep. So that's part of what makes it playable and more enjoyable, almost, that something's happening, I need to respond to it. Otherwise, you just get blown up all of a sudden. So I guess that's kind of what you're getting at, that that these things need to have slight detachment from reality to make it a better game, inverted commas.
In some ways. In other ways, it depends what you're going for. Like, what's your priority when you're designing something? But yeah, like, and that kind of gets quite deep and intense discussion, and people have a lot of opinions about it, which is fair enough. But what I was meaning is that you just want to twist the truth just a little bit, but that's what I wanted to do for this, at least. So yeah, these breach structures, the idea is that when each one of these conical explosives goes off, it will create a flash on the other side, and it will go black, so you can see that one's gone off. So there'll be an explosion, 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 explosion. And by that, you can see it's just like a clock going round, right?
Where
and
it
then
is
at
and
the
how long
end,
is,
where it is. And then at the end, the final 4 shaped explosives will kind of blow the chunk out. This is the final visual design, but it took a long. And then this is an animation that I guess will be a bit juttery, but you can see the idea.
Okay. Oh, I see.
So you can see it's going along, it's clearly telling everyone on the other side, and then it makes a hole.
Nice.
So this is a huge collaboration with people from lots of different teams.
So you as the artist, I guess, behind this, as well as sounds like you did the research to figure out what might be reasonable in terms of like how do we produce this as a gadget to go in the game. I presume that as the artist in you produced the textures, the models, etc., and then handed that over to an animator who actually then produced what we're watching now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did the concepts. Well, I did the research into like theoretically what could work. Then I did the concepts. I did a block out, which is like just a really, really rough model that we got into the game, and then we tested and tested and tested and tested. Once they were happy with it, I did a final concept, and then I did the final model and textures, and gave it to the animator to make it move, and then the VFX artist to make the cool things happen.
Screen shake, dust.
Screen shake, dust, explosions, all of the black cloth trailing around. That was really cool. Like I was thinking maybe it would be possible to do this, and then he did it. So nice. Yeah, like and yes, but to get there, this was like the final rough concept. But the reason with the shaped explosives and the thing, the idea was that you're making a perforated edge. So you make a perforation, and then you like make a hole between them.
Push it out. Yeah.
But that was because originally it was easier to make it a pentagon shaped hole because you get a nice flat surface along the bottom that you can vault over. You get the little section in the camera view. So when you're placing it on the wall in the beginning stage, like here, then you can see the object. Yeah. You know, like all of these things had to be thought about. So this was the original, and then it got changed. Oh no, this maybe was earlier, and then before that there were another couple of versions which are here, which are a bit more outlandish, a bit more intense. But these came with different restrictions. At the very beginning, when we started making this gadget, the goal was that it can't have any electricity involved in it. It can't have any explosions, and it needed to be something you could start and stop. So you can start the circle and then walk away, and your friend can come along and continue it.
Right, okay.
So all of the limitations I said before, plus those extra limitations, meant like there were very few things we could do within the reality or the feeling of kind of grounded that I was trying to go for. So that was one of them, and then so this gives you a bit of like a really clear overview of like that's just one gadget.
Yeah, it's a lot of detail and thought and work goes into it.
That's just one. It's a lot. It's quite intense, and it's very fun as well because you're working with people who do different stuff to you and solving different problems. And I remember one time one of the coders came over and just told me that we were working on it and he was making it into a circle. I was like, okay, that's really cool. And then we got this version pretty much working. Like you could start it, you could move it around and then walk away. Someone else could come along and finish it. That was really cool, but it was also really annoying, and I had to have this tank there to explode. You know, like there were all these problems. And then on top of that, we realized that the wall was 40 centimeters thick.
Right, and that blade doesn't.
And we've got some like circular saw, and I mean it's a game. We can twist things a little bit, but in Siege, you could just shoot a few bullets next to it and break away the wooden layers, because in Siege you can kind of just destruct it, the walls piece by piece. And you could just see that the blade wasn't going all the way through, and like that was a bit annoying. And then they came and said, actually, we want it a little bit different. And we were kind of, both of us looked at each other and went, okay, it's all right.
Nice.
This bug isn't going to come to us later. We can do something else.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I was actually thinking when I invited you to share your screen of something a bit different, a flying thing, but I think we've probably covered that one enough, unless you want to.
A flying thing?
A flying thing. You made a quadcopter a while ago, which I thought was
Oh yeah,
perhaps
but
not
that's just
for game. It was more of a hobby thing, perhaps. But
that was just art. That was just to satisfy the desire to
okay,
make one, and this was literally just
let me share the screen
modeling.
again. Yeah. Okay, because I know we had a chat about some of the electronics that might go onto a quadcopter like this, and I wasn't sure if that's because it was related to game and all the research, or if this was just you doing your due diligence,
No,
whatever.
that I guess that's the craft.
Yeah.
So I guess in this, if we're talking about craft design art, like the design I took from a standard one,
Mm-hmm.
the craft is like me modeling each resistor based on a photo.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kind of artistic expression is just the DIY silliness that I enjoy. And I mean, like putting a solar panel on the top is just a kind of a joke of imagine if this thing could charge itself, you know, like it wasn't, it was just, and then all of the tape, that's just something I enjoy. Like it's just,
I think it looks good though. It looks like it's been used, and
it looks
it looks
fun,
real in
you know?
inverted commas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's the flying thing.
So what brought you to this point in your life? Let's go back a bit. Tell your story.
Tell my story.
Not your whole story, obviously, but what were your
Well,
inspirations through your, I don't know, childhood and growing up and early career, and then sort of go from there.
Well, I guess you are a significant reason why I'm here, to be honest.
Oh.
No, it's true. Like, I'm the younger brother. We grew up in the middle of some fields, and computers were everywhere when I was growing up. And I remember sitting on your bedroom floor while I was allowed to, looking through your Novatech magazine, building a dream computer. Right? Like that was the thing I did. That was the thing I did for fun when I was 9 or 10. Was just like not actually doing it, but making an Excel spreadsheet of all of the things and how much it would cost and would it play Counter-Strike Source.
That's the big question.
That was the only thing I was interested in.
Half-Life 2 as well. That was a big one, wasn't it, for us?
Oh yeah, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to play Half-Life 2 because Source was like had way less physics and all that stuff, so it's easier to run, you know. But no, so growing up around you and computers and stuff, but I was always making stuff. I was always like,
I can't remember what age you were, but you got a milkshake license. I think that was the first piece of software you bought for yourself, and I think that's when you really properly started getting into like the 3D modeling side of things as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think before that, we went to a family friends in the Lake District. I have no idea what the program was. Mm-hmm. It could have been Bryce. It could have been Rhino. I mean, they're old 3D programs. But I I was shown this 3D package by family friends, and you guys all just kind of walked out, I think. And I was just still there making this really cool motorbike that you would lie down to ride. And I was basically remaking Tron, but I think I'd probably only seen it in a glimpse. I'd never actually like looked. So I loved it. That was really fun. And that was also the same place that we would play GoldenEye on the N64.
Yeah.
And I just realized.
I think it might even have been that family that introduced us to the original Half-Life as well. Or
probably.
Maybe Team Fortress.
I mean, one of them played Team Fortress at competitive level, and definitely.
Anyway.
But that just meant that I was making stuff, and technology was around, and I think the technology side was something that like the marrying of the two is just kind of like I still always want to be making things, but I think the technology stuff was a way to kind of escape being in the middle of nowhere or at school, or so that was kind of, it wasn't that I was very good with technology. Like I've tried coding. I tried.
You don't write your own shaders, I guess.
No, I give up on that. Okay. I also am not interested in making tools. I realized this. Like,
interesting. Yeah.
You
want to use the tools to make stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
that's fair enough. Yeah.
But anyway, so I've never been super technological, just enough to get by in this world. And yeah, went through school. I think you introduced me to Hammer Editor for the Counter-Strike and Half-Life. And I remember you and your friendship group made one
of the buildings from school.
Our school building from in Source, so you could go in 1.6.
What a bunch of nerds, huh?
I mean, I think this story is quite common. Like, the more I talk to people from around the place, like, it's not that nerdy. It's quite common.
Okay. That's quite nice to know. Yeah.
More and more people I hear making maps in Quake, making maps in Counter-Strike, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, so when I went to that same school, my friends and I would play lots of LAN games on our little laptops, and we would also start playing around with like modding a little bit. Mm-hmm. I remember at one point I was downloading mods for Counter-Strike to change the weapons to look like weapons from The Matrix, Underworld, and Equilibrium.
Okay.
The three important films of the early 2000s. And I would download them on the downstairs computer, put them on your server or a memory stick or something, go upstairs, plug them in, and play Counter-Strike against bots with these different models.
Yeah. And
I realized for a while that I was actually more focused on changing the models than playing the game.
Interesting.
Or just as, like it was as interesting to me.
Yeah.
Was customizing it. So yeah, that kind of was really fun. And when I was at school, I was saying to you earlier, like, we were very fortunate to be able to get a bit obsessive over things in some ways. Like, given the space to actually, decide when we did our homework. I mean, we're meant to be doing it at a particular time, but our schools allowed us to kind of ignore that as long as we got the work done. So, making games or making modifications to games. And then moving on to kind of going to uni, I decided to go to art school to do my foundation year. And that was because I thought the correct or the better path would be to do archaeology and anthropology, super interested in culture and history, really interested in that. So I thought that was the right thing to do. But I wanted to make sure that I gave art a go, because I knew that I was always going to be making stuff. So I this was the thing like I wanted to do in my free time.
So was there some? So I know from my point of view, there was a lot of emphasis on, I think, maths and things for the courses that I did at uni. Was there a similar sort of thing that for you? I mean, the foundation year was sort of getting you ready for the art degree, the game art. I can't remember what it was you did now, but was that kind of you must have done fine art to get into this, and then when you got there, you found out that actually that's not really true, and none of the teachers needed it, or?
Well, no, like,
okay.
To me, if you're going to do an art degree, you should do a foundation year.
Okay.
Because it just, like, especially now thinking back on it, I chose to do the foundation year as a way of saying, I want to just try art and make sure this is the right thing. And I knew kind of quite immediately the second I got to art school, I was like, yeah, no, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I was thinking I'd do illustration to do concept art for games. But in reality, I think that was just that was me not connecting two sides of myself, right? So there was me, the artist, painting at school in kind of on canvases, enjoying painting and making cool worlds. And then there was me just at home or on my laptop, just making modifications to games and playing around with like playing games, but also like being interested in how they're made.
Yep.
And I hadn't connected the fact that modeling and texturing and making the gameplay and all that stuff would combine those two together. And so I thought, I'll just go down this way. I'll just go to do concept art. Like that sounds really cool, really exciting, but it's super difficult. So when I was at uni in my foundation year, I went to a bunch of different things for illustration, and illustration was always very kind of fine arty, get your stuff in a magazine or get your stuff in a, and that's not really like, I wanted to do a more of a craft. And that was why I went to the game art course. And then I went to the game art course in Leicester at de Montfort. And when I started there, it was kind of like a click of, oh, this goes together, and this technology and this art combination fits the way that my brain works in many ways and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But in terms of the foundation year, like if you're going to make art, if you're going to be creating something, if you're going to do that stuff, you need to know the options. And the foundation year basically gives you a year to explore different avenues. So, I mean, I'm all over the place even now. Like I'm trying to make things like textile, jewelry. I'm working on a van, like woodwork, all these different things. Yeah. But I wouldn't have seen a couple of them if I hadn't have done that. And I think that was important. So, yeah.
Nice. Good. So you mentioned your van. Let's touch on that very quickly, because I think if I'm right in thinking, you're working Ubisoft in Barcelona, and then you got this job in Helsinki, and then you drove from Barcelona to Helsinki in the van that you'd kitted out. Is that right?
There's a step in the middle.
Oh, go on then.
Which explains something. This year it'll be 10 years since I went to uni for game art, and a couple of years ago,
my little brother, 10 years out of uni. That's scary.
Yeah. And a couple of years ago, I was really struggling with like what to do next. It kind of felt like I had ticked the box, or I had found the limitation of what I was doing there, and I'd found kind of, this is cool, but it's not really what I want to be doing. I want to, what's next? I didn't really know. So I decided to take a sabbatical. And the thing is, I was so struck by fear of, like financial fear, that sabbatical was like very hard, not very hard working, but like very stressful.
Stressful, yeah.
Like,
how do you make sure
taking
work
every
keeps coming
job,
in? And
yeah. Taking every job, even if it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't going to actually pay me what I'll just take it anyway. And I started to not enjoy making in that way, like modeling and texturing, because it was just a job. It was just to get it done. It wasn't for a purpose. There was no reason. It was just like
someone told you to do a thing, so you went and did a thing.
Yeah, and then they told you to do it in a really stupid way, but you have to do it that way anyway. It's like,
come on. Yeah.
And since probably I was 18 or 19, I've had this kind of thing in my mind. I mean, our cousin did it. She bought a van. Her and her now husband bought a van and did it up, and then went around festivals living in their van for a bit. And I had a friend when I was on foundation who had this dream of buying a van and traveling around Europe. And this is just something that was in my mind at the back somewhere. And when I arrived in Barcelona, became more and more of a constant desire to have a mode of transport.
I mean, to be honest, I see those videos on YouTube of people kitting out and living in vans, and it just looks fantastic. But I'm not sure it would work for me. so you got bitten by the bug, and then you made it happen.
Almost. I bought the van last year, and the same day I bought it, with the intention to go traveling with my partner around, the same day I was called by a recruiter saying, "Do you want to talk to this company in Helsinki?" And I try and not close doors unless they really should be closed. And I'm realizing now that I need to choose which doors I keep open sometimes, say no to more stuff. But that day I was like, yeah, let's talk to them. Let's see what this is about.
I didn't realize it's quite so quick, purchasing the van and then, okay.
Yeah. That same day I also drove underneath a 2-meter barrier, which was bent down to 1.8. So I scraped the whole top of the van.
Your brand new van. I didn't know that.
Not brand new, 10 years old.
Brand new to you.
But yeah, no, that was a stressful day.
So the sabbatical, stressful, and you glad you did it? Would you have done it differently? How does that sit with you now? I
needed to face the financial fear. Yeah. And I still feel like I do need to face the financial fear. I'd definitely do it again. I'd try and do it differently.
Okay.
Like,
you've learned from it.
But then again, it's led to this. So, whatever.
Yeah.
It's worked out. But yeah, so as you were saying,
back to the van.
Job in Helsinki happened, and we packed everything in and we drove. And it's a tiny thing. It's not, when you say van, some people think of like
long wheelbase Sprinter or something.
Buses or long. You can't stand up in it.
You did a trip to America as well, and you got a van for that trip, didn't you? And that looked amazing. Just anyway, carry on.
Yeah. No, they're pretty much the same size, but the one that we rented in the US was bigger. So, or not bigger, but newer and a little bit differently shaped. Right. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I got bitten by the bug of freedom and being able to change and move. I mean, just as an example, in the past year, I've moved 5 times. Or January to January. January this year to January the year before. 5 different flats.
Right.
And then before that, the longest I'd ever lived in one flat was 3 years. Well, 2.5 years. So yeah, it's a thing,
It's a thing you do. That's fair enough.
And driving here from Barcelona during COVID times was interesting as well.
Yep, I can imagine.
Extra stress, extra weirdness.
And so was that properly holiday? Were you still trying to work during the journey and sort of figuring out how to do that as well?
I managed to finish off my last piece of freelance work before I left.
Okay, so it was just trying to relax, but also stressed about arriving on time and COVID and everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And around that time, we were in Switzerland, and there were torrential storms, and the flooding happened in Germany and France and Belgium. So we were in Switzerland, and we spent a few days there where it was just torrential rain every day, all day. And very fortunate to be hosted by someone for a couple of days, and I didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Time. But yeah, and now we're working on it again. Got a solar panel on top finally.
Yeah, good stuff.
Gonna go to Italy next week.
Oh wow, you driving?
Yeah.
Very good. Hope it's fun. Hope it does the trick.
It's gonna take a few days.
And so the other thing that I found out recently was that in Helsinki you have a library, and the library has some ridiculously cool facilities.
Yeah.
Now you've got 3D printers. Have you got laser cutters and all sorts as well?
laser cutter, 3D printer, large format printer that does like stickers, like these stickers.
Okay.
And then you've got like there's so many things. Recording studio.
Oh wow, proper library.
Yeah, you can rent instruments, so you can just choose from a wall of instruments.
That's amazing.
It's a modern library. It's one of the key things that people do when they come to Helsinki. It's like everyone who's come is like, oh yeah, we went to see the library.
That sounds amazing, to be honest. Like, just I know a lot of people talk about libraries and how originally they were about books and knowledge, and a lot of the time they don't really keep up with modern sort of requirements or what they could offer. And it sounds like these libraries over there have done the job. Maybe.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things to think about is that like knowledge isn't just books.
That's exactly it. Yeah,
knowledge is experience, and I think, as I was saying, we were very fortunate for like where we grew up that we could experiment with things that we probably wouldn't have had access to if we didn't go to the schools we did. And it's like I realized that a lot of the positive feeling I get from making stuff came from being able to, like
just try it out and see.
And of course, like if I didn't have the facilities, I would have still be doing something. I still would have been making and enjoying it. But I mean, yeah, to be able to just play and realizing that a lot of that play and experimentation leads to kind of growth, knowledge, experience, and understanding. Yeah. Like modern libraries. I think there are a few in the UK doing something similar, but this one's just a bit extra. It's just a bit like you guys went really far on this. Huh?
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
So you've had a 3D printer in the past. In fact, you made me something. Let me just show this.
Yeah.
Zoom in. This is Dog from Half-Life 2 that Kit made me as a gift a while ago. And you modeled that. You didn't steal models from the games. You actually designed it and 3D printed it and figured everything out.
That was a project that took me 6 years to finish.
Long time.
I started when I was in the UK, and I was basically like, I'm gonna redesign this iconic character. I'm gonna model a game-ready version of it so that it can be in a really cool portfolio piece, and I'm going to 3D print it with movable joint. And it's just the ambition. Just insane ambition.
Well, as we were talking about earlier, knowledge is about having done stuff, the experience, and influence your. Anyway, carry on.
No, but just having tried all of that, like, that's true. It definitely showed me limitations. But yeah, no. Along with that, I also did a bunch of other 3D prints of stuff from Rainbow Six Siege. I did a bunch of the gadgets we made in Barcelona so that they could have them around the studio, and then
there's a picture of you cosplaying as a character.
Yeah,
I think you printed something for that, didn't you?
I printed the mask, and the backpack, and a couple of things.
And you've done some other 3D printing type stuff as well, sort of more on the jewelry side of things.
Yeah.
You were playing with pewter at one point as well, I think, but I'm not sure how much you've done with that.
So when I was on that foundation year in Bournemouth and talking about like experience, I made this.
I know you big.
Make it big.
Okay.
It's just a tiny. It's meant to be a 3. Okay.
Right.
But it was cast in casting sand that I was gifted.
And that was pewter, was it? Sorry.
This is pewter, yeah.
Okay.
And it's made in casting sand that I have in this box since then. But I drew the 3 into the sand, drew the 3, and I like, it's like, yeah, it's going to be a 3. Poured the pewter in, took it out, and realized that, it was backwards. All the work I did making the shape is back to it. Now I have a backwards 3 that has been like my necklace for a long time, 10 years or 11 years. But yeah, experience. Like I was doing that over a candle flame
Yep.
on my desk with a carpet floor. sorry, parents.
Careful.
But yeah, that was silly. But at the same time, it wasn't really super. It was like I had it
was
under control, and it was
accessible, and you achieved it. I mean, you made a mistake, but you'll learn and all that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But since then, I've made a few things here and there. Even when I was even younger, I think I made some jewelry. But like, I always wanted to do more, make a bit of an effort there. And recently, before I 3D printed some stuff, and then more recently, I've actually started working in silver and making.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've started doing some rings and some kind of my own designs, but it's early days.
Are you willing to show us some of the things?
Yeah, so I have a box of the 3D printed stuff from a few years ago, and they're all kind of the same. Noises.
That's all right.
This one doesn't fit me, but it fits a lot. Can you see?
Okay. And
so
this
it's
is
a necklace,
this is, yep.
And it's 3D printed, and there's a little bit of flex, but it's PLA, which is not the best. It's PLA, which is not the best for flexibility. You know, it will just
brittle,
break.
maybe. Yeah.
But yeah, so I made a few different variations with some changes.
Notches. Is that actually multiple filaments there, or is that sort of painted or something after the fact?
It's painted. So this one is painted as well.
Oh, okay. All right.
I did everything.
So in terms of the finishing, you printed it, and then did you do sanding and maybe base coat, paint, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. This one is a raw one. I don't know if you can see any of this stuff here.
And we can kind of catch the effect of it, but yeah.
So this one is a raw one, and it's really nasty. And especially if it's going to be jewelry, and it can't really be like that. So
snagging on hair and things like that, that's not a good idea. Yeah.
You sand it down with some wet and dry paper, and it gets really nice and smooth and clean. And then if you just spray it with paint, it solves all those problems.
Nice.
But this is an example of like, I need to work on the design a little bit more, because if I'm going to sell these, or if I'm going to create these for people, I need to know their neck diameter. And like need to make it the right kind of the right sizing, because it comes on and off pretty well if you're the right size. But if it's a bit too big, then but this is kind of my first design, and I still really like it, so I'm going to keep working on it over the next probably couple of years. But yeah, I don't really know what to say about it.
Fair enough. You don't have to say anything. It just is a thing, yeah. Is this now moving on to the silver stuff you've been working with?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're tiny. This is the problem. I show it's it just looks like a silver ring.
So is this, is it, I don't know what they're called, but people have like a cone that you put the silver, the beginnings of a ring onto, and you tap it so it gets sort of the correct size and shape. Is that what you've been working with as well?
It's called a mandrel.
I knew that, but I just didn't know it, if you know what I mean.
I think I know exactly.
Couldn't access the word.
I think the reason I started doing this is because I really wanted to do more physical making, and blacksmithing was really appealing, and I'm also wanting to move around all the time, so didn't really like having a forge. And
I don't know, you could put a forge in the van.
People do, but then you don't have anywhere to sleep.
They tend to deal with horses more than anything else as well.
Yeah. Let me just get my tools.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe do a little bit of this.
Look at this. Fantastic.
So, this is also a work in progress.
Yeah.
But
Oh, you made the pouch, you mean?
yeah, you can see the pins.
Yep, brilliant. Nice.
But yeah, this is mandrel, and it's just steel tapered cone and a couple of hammers. This tiny rotary tool.
Oh wow. Is that more of a polish type tool, or is it actually for cutting and
I wouldn't
whatever
cut.
else?
I wouldn't really cut with it. No.
Okay.
That would take about a year.
Probably stall and get stuck
Yeah.
and whatever else.
But yeah, with that mandrel, you get your base silver and you just form it around the mandrel. You can do lots of different shaping techniques to it. And that's the other thing, is that there's so much physicality to it that I can draw my designs.
Mm-hmm.
I can think about how I'm going to make them. And then there's techniques to learn and problems to solve while making.
Yeah.
For example, this one here. Let me put it there. Can you see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh wow. Nice.
So the idea behind this was that I really like this triangular silver. I've got a couple of rings made in it already, and I wanted to have like this wire wrapping around it, and give that impression of like that classic ring thing of having something in the center.
Yeah.
But like to get it to wrap around in the right ways, to get it to sit in the right place, I had to do a lot of like order of operations thinking. It's Adam Savage kind of thing that he's pushed a lot on his videos.
Yeah.
But for example, for this, if I just bent the major bit and then tried to bend the wire to it, I would have nowhere for the wire to sit. So I wouldn't be able to solder it very well, because you'd have a curved, how do I do this? Like a curved surface,
Yeah.
and then a flat surface that would, so you'd have like a very minimal touch point. So what I had to do in the end is, I was thinking about this stuff all the way through. I'd drawn it. I think I have a drawing of it here. But yeah, I knew what I wanted to make. But before I did anything, because it's silver and it's expensive, I had to think about what I was doing. And basically I cut the silver. I drew out a groove so that we could get I could get this shape, and then I'd have like a groove for it to fit into. So there's a little bit of a gap here, but it's much closer than having like this,
Right.
Like
not fully following, but I think I get you.
You have a curved surface.
Are we talking about the fact that when you bend a metal and you let go, it sort of pops back a bit?
I'm way out. Okay, let me just.
Okay, sorry.
No. This is good. Because I've already solved the problem in my brain. I'm talking about the. What's it called?
Don't worry, this doesn't have to be a tutorial on making.
No. If you have a triangular based prism,
yeah,
and you have a cylinder, you want to connect them together. You're going to have
that connection point. You either have triangles sticking out the corners, or you have circles sticking out the corners.
You have that, right?
Right.
So instead, I had to think about, before I did any shaping, like make a groove.
Oh,
so
okay.
The wire can sit inside it.
I see what you're saying now. Yeah.
It's like all of this stuff is really cool, because everything I've done making stuff in the past, whether it be digitally for games or just drawing or shaping wood, it all comes into play in this, but not perfectly. So it's kind of, it's a new thing, but I'm not starting from zero.
Yeah.
And it's really fun.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah. We kind of went on a tangent.
That's okay. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, or do you think it might be time to sort of wrap up and finish up?
I don't know.
Not sure if we've got any questions from viewers or
nothing really else that I'm thinking about. I'm just being led by you as the
yeah, fair enough. Okay, good stuff. Well, in that case,
talk.
I think we've come to a fairly decent closing point. We've covered a lot of topics. It's been really good to talk. Thank you, Kit. And for anyone watching, we've got Geek Mom Projects coming on next week, or Deborah Ansell. So watch out for that. Goodbye, everybody. And thank you very much, Kit. Bye-bye.
Thank you.